Bonjour, je suis Andrew, et c'est Gayties Toys. Right now, all my Montreal friends are going to ne pourrai jamais. On today's MIA 80s Ladies, we're going to be looking at sort of, the last two figures, dolls rather, for Jem and the Holograms that we need to cover and really close the loop on that whole franchise. We've looked over the Stingers before. We've sort of really done, a kind of a deep dive on Jem and the Holograms, but it's time to really sort of get into the final two, and that being Astral and Regine. We've talked about Jem and the Holograms, the history in past videos. However, for these two characters specifically, it's kind of important to bear in mind that by 1987, Hasbro had really sort of, taken the lead beyond Mattel as the sort of king of the hill, and were, just swimming in money. But by the time, the end of the year happened and going into 1988, the entire industry really went cool. A lot of toy companies were putting in very expensive electronics. Ninja Turtles were right around the corner. Parents were really kind of like scaling back, so the toy industry responded in kind. As such, Hasbro was really in a kind of like slash and dash kind of mode, and a lot of their toy lines, of which there were many, there were probably too many to sustain, were canceled, and chief among them was Jem and the Holograms, who, depending on who you asked, really kind of ran its course by this point anyway. However, being a toy line that was, reasonably successful and planned for the future, they did have a lot of dolls, lined up for the 1988 Toy Fair catalog, and that these are where a lot of the images we see come from. So again, we've covered Stingers. They had planned three just pretty cool Jem dolls, of Jem specifically. And also two new characters who would get, at least a late appearance very late in the Jem and the Holograms cartoon, that being the stage magician Astral, as well as their brand new fashion designer Regine. The first character we'll discuss is Astral, whose real name is Maeve Eldritch, which is one of the best names I've ever heard in my life. She was, certainly a stage magician, but didn't actually believe in, the dark arts per se, and was very, sort of anti-magic-based con artist. So she made a very good foil to Rapture in her, one single episode on the Jem and the Holograms cartoon. The design was cool. The intent was cool. I like that, Jem was sort of introducing, kind of Zatanna-esque stage to the show. But I mean, she really was a one-trick pony. Regine Césaire was from France, and also likewise a kind of a one-hit wonder, having one episode late in the series. She was from France, had an accent that, if you squint real hard and put on your Pepe Le Pew glasses, she might be French. It's hard to tell. She was like a fashion designer, much like Shayna before her, and she was a big fan of the Holograms. She was, of the two, let's be real, my favorite. I mean, she was, very short-tempered, bit of a temper, didn't take criticism well. I see you, girl. Likewise, her look was very cool. She was sort of the first character to really introduce like turquoise hair and had this great like black, white, and pink outfit quite often. So I mean, just head to toe. Not not a lot to the character, not a lot of appearances, but certainly like a real fan favorite. As I mentioned before, both Astral and Regine were planned to appear in the 1988 line. However, the bottom fell out and these two never came to be. However, they would make an appearance later on. To this day, the Integrity Toys Jem line is still, the gold standard for the franchise. They produced so many Jem, Pizzazz, the Holograms, the Misfit dolls, plus, really filled out their entire cast. And of course, that did include Astral and Regine in 2014. That year was bonkers. That year, they really sort of, they gave you every character, a supporting role, whether they were made a doll or not. And Regine and Astral made it to the cut, and they both look spectacular. I'm not Astral's biggest fan, but that doll looks way better than the original. Really, really pops, really gorgeous fabrics, and likewise, Regine finally is, made manifest, and a big fan. So what's the future hold? Currently, the loyal subjects are doing a new kind of brand of much more moderately priced Jem dolls compared to Integrity Toys, and they've really sort of come out of the gate swinging. They've got, Jem was a huge success amongst all the genders, all the ages. Likewise, we've got Holograms coming. We've got a 2-pack with Jerrica and Synergy. Pizzazz has been shown. So I think they're gonna dive deep. I don't know how deep. I don't know if Regine and Astral deep. It really kind of depends on sales, how far they want to go with this. I wouldn't pin too many hopes on that. If anything, I think the Stingers would probably have a better shot at getting made. But nevertheless, there's Gem product out again, and it's good. I mean, even if you look at the pictures, they don't look good. Once you get in hand, it's pretty spectacular. That said, I'm a bit of an action figure collector, and I would very much like Gem action figures, as I see, I think she really stands tall amongst your Joes, your Transformers, your He-Mans. So that's still the goal for me, and there's really two companies, you can probably guess who would probably go in that direction. I think at least one of them is probably looking over at what Loyal Subjects is doing and saying, well, the market's saturated. I can promise you, if you know a Gem fan, there's never enough, so there's money there. That said, Gem has sort of made, let's say, a cameo in a recent G.I. Joe SDCC exclusive, so, I mean, she's maybe on their mind, so we'll see what the future brings. I still, myself would prefer an action figure line, but I gotta say, Integra Toys is good, and, if they go hard, if they make Regine, if they make Astral, I'm probably down, to be honest. For more information on all of this, there's incredible amount of dolls, of prototypes, of everything. I would recommend going to rockgen.com, which I will link below. They've been an incredible resource and really a great one-stop shop for everything Gem, frankly. But likewise, I would like to thank you for watching, for liking, for commenting, for all those YouTubey things, and I will see you next time on MIA 80s Ladies. Au revoir.